I've got a new charger here in the state of Charge Garage, and that is the Wolfbox WE50 50 amp EV charger. And that means it's review time. I'll be conducting my full review, including cold weather testing, the extreme heat testing, and of course the frozen connector drop test, amongst other things. But before we jump into the review, let's open up the box and see what comes inside. Okay, so here we have the body of the unit here. It's nice, got an integrated connector holster built into the unit, so no remote connector holster. I suppose we wrap the cable around the top here. It's tapered a little bit, so it would be able to hold the cable without it falling over. A decent design. It's a little on the big side, but I think it actually looks good. A 25-foot long cable. This is a thick cable. First impressions, it feels very plasticky. I wouldn't think this is going to do good in the cold weather test, but we'll see when we get there. The connector seems pretty decent. No rubberized grip, kind of, I don't know, it's not bad. It feels pretty good in my hand. One thing I will note is that the locking tab is plastic, it's not metal, so that might be prone to breaking. It's got a nice cap on it, and I like this cap slides on and off easily. Some of these caps, when they give you a cap for your connector holster, when you put it on, like you've got to battle it to get it off. This one kind of slides off pretty easily, so it's a nice fit. It's not too tight, and it comes with the cable to hardwire it, or well, also I say the pigtail for the NEMA 1450 outlet if you prefer to use that. So I don't need this now. So yeah, it gives you both options here included within the unit. Obviously, I'm assuming set from the factory, because it's set for hardwiring, it's set to allow higher amperage, and then if you were going to apply this, you'd have to lower it down. But there is a dip switch inside that allows you to dial down the power. Interestingly though, it seems to be only a 3-position dip switch. I'm going to check that out later. I could be wrong about this. I did a quick overview of the product. It looks like you can set it inside to 40 amps, 48 amps, or 50 amps, not lower than 40 amps. But you might be able to do it lower than 40 amps in the app. We'll find out about that a little bit later, which is interesting because usually when there's internal dip switches, it allows you to set the amperage all the way down to at least 24 amps, sometimes to 16 amps. But this one seems like it's only 40 amps, 48 amps, and 50 amps. And some people might say, well, why do you need a different position between 48 amps and 50 amps? Well, this can deliver 50 amps. But if you have it on a 60 amp circuit, the most you're allowed to deliver is 48 amps because it's a continuous load, and you're only allowed to have a continuous load electrical device deliver up to 80% of the circuit's maximum. So 60 amps times 0.8 is 48 amps. If you want this to deliver the full 50 amps that it's capable of, you have to put it on either a 70 amp circuit or an 80 amp circuit. So, which often people don't have that much spare capacity in their house. It's not worth running a thicker wire, paying extra and everything, and for the extra breaker to get those 2 more amps. Honestly, I would just put it on a 48 amp circuit. But in any event, so you could use the plug if you want to put it on a NEMA 1450 and charge at 40 amps. Okay, this is the mounting bracket template. You'd put this on the wall, shows you where to drill your holes. And we'll go to the mounting bracket. In that case, here's the mounting bracket. There's the 3 points where you're going to attach it to the wall. And they give you 3 screws with 3 anchors. And these are all self-tapping screws. 2 of the screws are bigger and fatter than the 3rd. Those are the ones that go on the top. The smaller screw, the single small screw, and it's significantly smaller, is for the bottom. I've never seen that. Usually all of the mounting screws that come with EV chargers for their mounting bracket are always the same size. I believe it's the first time they ever gave me one smaller screw than the other 2. All right, I'm going to cut in here because I learned a little bit later on exactly why the screws are not the same size. The 2 larger screws get screwed into the wall with the head sticking out about 1/8 of an inch, so you can hang the charger on the top of those screws. Then on this bottom hole down here, you screw that permanently into the wall. That way the unit can't just be lifted off and stolen. So 2 big screws go on the top with the bigger heads. They get hung on this, and the smaller screw gets screwed right through this once you have it on the wall, and that secures it to the wall. So there was a method to their madness. Back to the review. And then we've got these 3 small screws here. Those are to, I don't want to lose those. Those are to mount the unit to the mounting bracket here on the back, which we'll go over when I do the installation. There's 1, 2, 3 holes there, and that's where you screw the unit to the mounting bracket, and then you kind of hang it on the wall. So I won't be putting the screws all the way into the wall. You got to leave a little bit of space so this thing will hang. Again, we'll go over that later. All right, let's see this. We've got this big poster here. Scan the code to download the Wolfbox app. This is a Wi-Fi connected smart charger, so that's where you download the app. And this here is the app user guide. And they also give you the phone number for support and an email address on this big poster. This is the user manual. This is to find an electrician. They'll hook you up with an electrician. You can either call this number or scan this QR code here, and they'll hook you up with a local, qualified, licensed electrician. Also, we have 3 cards here. These are 2 RFID cards. These are user RFID cards. You can activate this with one of these cards, which I really like when the chargers do that. If this is installed somewhere outside or in a public building, or sometimes people use EV chargers in like Airbnbs and so forth, you can give the person this card and only they can use it. Somebody else driving by can't just come and plug your car. It gets turned on with this. But you have to activate that in the app. You can have it so it's just plug and play every time you just plug in. If it's in a private garage like this, you wouldn't use something like that. But if it's installed outside, I like the fact that they give you these RFID cards. It makes it really easy for you to just give someone the card and they can just use the charger and only they can use it. And this is a management card. Again, a first. I've never seen this on any of the chargers, even the ones that have the RFID cards. Evidently, we use this. This won't activate charging, but this is to set it up, and it says, please keep this card at a safe place and carefully read the instructions for the usage guide on the back. So anyway, I'm not sure why I would need this, but when the EV charger cannot connect to the app or needs to clear the data, you're going to need this card. Okay, we'll learn about it a little bit later. All right, well, that's it for the unboxing. Before we jump into the review, let's take a look at the Wolfbox's key features. Okay, the Wolfbox WE50 costs $499. It's 19.5 inches by 13.8 inches by 10.5 inches. I pointed out after the unboxing that it is a little large for a charger. Not the largest I've seen, but it's a little large. It is a 50 amp unit, which can deliver up to 12 kilowatts if it's on the proper circuit to deliver the full 50 amps. The unit is adjustable with internal dip switches from a 40 amp output to a 50 amp output. It has a 25-foot long cable. It has the J1772 connector. This is not available with a NACS connector. So if you have a Tesla or another NACS-equipped electric vehicle and want to use the unit, you do need to use an adapter, but it will charge those vehicles just fine. The enclosure has an IP66 rating, which is the equivalent of a NEMA 4 rating. The operating temperature is negative 22 degrees Fahrenheit to 122 degrees Fahrenheit, which is negative 30 C to 50 C. It is a Wi-Fi connected smart charger that comes with an app. It's CSA safety certified. It's Energy Star rated. It comes with a 3-year warranty, and it is made in China. State of Charge is powered by Qmerit, North America's premier installer of electric vehicle charging equipment. After I've helped you decide which charger to buy, follow the link in the description of my videos and have Qmerit install it. And if you do follow that link, Qmerit will waive the $150 installation deposit. But this is an exclusive offer for State of Charge followers. So in order to get that offer, you must follow the link in the description of my videos. So now let's take a look how to install the Wolfbox. And first you have to decide what type of installation you're going to do. Are you going to install it with a NEMA 1450 plug and derate the unit to 40 amps, Are you going to use the existing whip that's included on this and hardwire it? If you do, you would attach the end of the whip to a junction box or feed it into a junction box and then have your feed from your electrical panel connected in there. I really don't like that type of a setup. If you're going to hardwire the unit, I think it's a much better and safer, quite honestly, installation if you remove that 24-inch whip that they give you and just hardwire the unit directly. Don't have a separate connection in a junction box. That's just another point of failure. I almost wish they didn't include this cable on the bottom of it. I know the company probably thinks they're making it easier for people, but that's where we see failures, particularly if you have this wired on a 70 amp or 80 amp circuit and you're drawing full 50 amps, like I would be with my Lightning. It's much better if you just directly hardwire the unit and don't have a separate junction box inside. So how do we do that? Okay. Well, first, if you were just going to use this with the existing whip and put it in a junction box, you're good to go right out of the factory. All you need to do is install the mounting plate, which back here you can see I've already installed it with just these 3 screws. It screws onto the back of the unit. Then the unit hangs on the wall on these 2 openings on the top here. Now, because I do reviews here, I'm not permanently mounting it, but I have my slot wall set up here with these 2 screws that I can hook and hang it onto. But you would have 3 of them installed on the wall already, and you'd hang the unit on that. Okay, so that's if you're just going to use it and use the included whip and wire it in a junction box. But if you're going to use the NEMA 1450 and have a lower output or do a direct hardwire, as I suggest, you have to open the unit up. And to do that, you have to remove these 10 screws around the perimeter of the back of the charger, which I'm going to do now and then hang it on the wall, and we'll take a look inside. Okay, let's see here. Now there should be a ribbon cable, and there is. So be careful when you're opening this up, because there's a ribbon cable to the front of the unit for the LED light and the RFID authentication. So let me remove that now. And it's 2 places I have to pinch and remove it. So give me a second, because these things are always super tight. Okay, there's one, and let me see. There's the second one. Good, and they're different sizes, because I'm looking at it and saying, am I gonna know which one goes to which? They're slightly different sizes, so that makes it easier. Okay, so take this out of the way. Take a sip of coffee. It's early in the morning. So now let's take a look inside. Okay, don't lose these screws. I actually don't. The screws, a lot of time these screws are made so that they'll remain in the unit. They have like a little washer on the end. These don't. These are starting to fall out. I don't like that type of a setup because it just leads people, you could hear them dropping out. Okay, well, let me stand it up now and they won't drop out. And let me hang it on the wall if I can do this here. Okay. All right, well, that's how it looks. Let me move this table out of the way right now so we can take a closer look. All right, well, here she is. Let's get this ribbon cable out of the way for now, if I could tuck it in the back. Okay, so here's the cable to the connector. This is, there'd be no reason to want to remove that. And here's the whip that is included for the hard wiring for the power. Now I noticed here it's got these tabs that you would snap up and put the wire in. Now I'm going to do it. Now there's tape over it, but there's no problem with me. Actually, you got to remove the tape. Let me see if I could remove the tape. I thought it would just peel off. Well, I really can't. But these things snap up there. I'm going to rip it a little bit because I'm not using this unit. After the review, probably. Let me see here. I'll peel this off. There it is. Okay, so these lift up and the cables The connectors go in, and that's how they lock in place. The ChargePoint Home Flex has a similar setup so that you don't actually have to use a driver to squish the ends of the wires in. These snap in and they hold the wires in place like that. So it should be easy. And if you're going to use the NEMA 1450 plug that they give you, if you take the end off, you'll see the ends of the connectors. And I know they look silver. It's not aluminum wire, it's actually copper, but the ends just seem to be like plated with aluminum. So they'll just slide in here. You'd basically replace the line 1 would land here, line 2 would land here, and then your ground goes over here. So that's how you would do it. Now you've got your NEMA 1450 plug attached. Just when you do, if you do this yourself, and I prefer qualified electricians do it, but if you do this yourself, well, I've noticed on chargers that give you the option to put the plug on, make sure you install it with the cable like this. See with the plug this way so it'll plug in. I've seen some people not pay attention and install it like this. Now the plug's facing out, and now they have to like twist it to plug it in. They end up taking it out and reattaching the wire. So if you're gonna do this yourself, make sure it's a good solid connection in there, and make sure you also install it so that the plug is hanging out of the charger that way. And also now if you want to hardwire it, which I really think is a much better installation than using this this whip that they include, you would take these wires off and you'd bring your feed in there, and that's where you'd hardwire it. It's a much cleaner, better installation, less of a chance of having a breakdown inside that junction box. And the one last thing I want to point out while we're taking a look inside here is, see these dip switches? There's 4 dip switches on there. That's how you derate the unit. You can lower it to 40 amps, to 48 amps, or to 50 amps. You would set it on 40 amps if you're going to use the NEMA 1450 plug. Or sometimes people just set the chargers to a maximum output anyway. They lower it because they don't need to charge as fast as the charger can. If you want it to 40 amps, the dip switch settings are in the user's manual. Right now, all 4 are set in the lowest position, and it's putting out 50 amps, so that must be the 50 amp position. You could set it to 40 amps, 48 amps, and 50 amps. Now, the difference between the 48 amps and 50 amps, you'd say, well, it's only 2 amps. Depends what circuit you're on. If you put this on a 60 amp circuit, a dedicated 60 amp circuit, you could charge at 48 amps. If it's on a NEMA 1450 plug, it's going to be a 50 amp circuit. If it's on a 60 amp circuit, you could charge at 48 amps. So you have to change the dip switches to limit to 48 amps. If it's on a 70 amp circuit or higher, or an 80 amp circuit, then you could charge on the full 50 amps. I have a dedicated 100 amp circuit for my reviewing here, so that's why I have it set for the 50 amp output, and that's what comes set to out of the factory. Now, I mentioned in the unboxing that I wasn't sure if this was the only way to lower the output. It's not. Within the app, you can lower it 50 amps, 48 amps, all the way down to 16 amp output, but don't use that as your limiting factor to limit the circuit. You have to set this internal dip switch to the maximum output that the circuit can support. You can't just do it inside the app, because if the app resets or there's some kind of app, you'll overdraw your circuit. This is to limit the maximum power that the circuit could put out. Then inside your app, you could actually lower it down lower. Let's say you just want to charge slower. There's data out there that proves charging even on level 2 on a lower rate is better for your battery. So I know plenty of people that are on 48 amp circuits that lower the output in their apps to like 24 amps or 30 amps, something like that. It's kinder on your battery. And if you plan on keeping your EV for a very long time, it's not a bad idea to charge at home at a slightly lower rate. So this will set it to the maximum, and then in your app you can lower it down even more. But do not set this to 50 amp output if you're on a 48 amp, a 60 amp circuit, or a 50 amp circuit, and then say, oh, I'll just do it inside the app. No, open this unit up and limit it inside, because the app can have problems. It can reset, it can crash, and then all of a sudden you might be charging at 50 amps on a 40 amp circuit or something like that, and that's when you have serious problems. Okay, that's all I really need to show you inside the unit. Let's get on with the review. And it's time for our cold weather testing. I put the charger in this freezer here about 26 hours ago for a full day. It's been deep freezing at below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. We'll do our cable deep freeze test to see how pliable the cable is, and also the connector drop test to make sure that if you drop your frozen connector a few times, it's going to survive that. First, let's see how cold it is in there. Okay, 11.5 degrees, actually negative 11.5 degrees Fahrenheit. It's always right around negative 12 degrees, somewhere around there. So it's been cold soaking in here for more than a day at negative 11 degrees Fahrenheit. We do this test to test how pliable the cable is when it's outside in your cold winter months. If the cable gets really stiff, it's hard to bend it and holster it back and then take it out of the holster and plug the car in. If you're fighting it, it becomes like a frozen garden hose if the cable doesn't bend when it's cold. So let's see how well this cable does. Okay. I always loop the cable up into small loops like this, and now we'll see how well it bends and how pliable it is. Okay. Okay, so as you can tell, it's coiled up in these small loops, and it's uncoiling a little bit, but see, this is kind of what you don't want to see. You don't want to see the cable remain like a spring almost, where it doesn't want to straighten out. Now, I can fight it and straighten it out, but let's say I just finished charging my car in the driveway, and now I want to holster the connector, loop the cable around the unit, and then go on my way. So let's see how well this works. Well, you can do it, but as you can see, it's kind of like not wanting to bend and be floppy like it is when it's warm. So this cable hasn't performed very well, and it's going to lose points on our ChargerRater. So you see how it's kind of still remaining? It doesn't really want to comply and bend and be floppy. That's not a good cold weather cable. And I didn't think it was, because the outer jacket on this cable seems stiff and plasticky when I first looked at it. Okay, next up we'll do the connector drop test. I'm going to drop the connector now 5 times from waist high, a little bit higher, just to simulate if you drop the connector. You're going to drop your connector from time to time, and if it's outside and it's cold and frozen, well, you know, you could have a problem. So let's see. Tough part about it is when the cables are really stiff, sometimes it's hard to drop the connectors and not have it land on the cable. That's 1, 2, 3, 'Little bit higher, 4, 5. Okay, let's take a look. Looks fine, so no visible damage at all. So the unit passes the connector drop test. Didn't do too well with the cable deep freeze test. Now, I also frequently do a cold weather power up test with the chargers. I can't do that on the chargers that are hardwired, and this unit's going to be hardwired. I'm going to hardwire it next. There's no way for me to put it in the freezer while it's hardwired. I do that with the plug-in units, but the hardwired units, this is a 50 amp charger, and I'm going to test it at the full 50 amps. I can't do a cold weather power up test, unfortunately. All right, we'll move on to the extreme heat test. And next up, it's time for our extreme heat test. I've had this heat lamp on the Wolfbox for 2 hours, maintaining a surface temperature of around 120 degrees. What we're going to do now is plug in my Ford F-150 Lightning. I'm going to leave the heat lamp on the Wolfbox for another 2 hours. The Lightning can draw the full 50 amps that the Wolfbox can deliver. I have the 80 amp onboard charger in my Lightning, so pulling 50 amps is no problem for it. We'll charge for 2 hours with the heat lamp on to make sure that even under these extreme heat conditions, the Wolfbox delivers the full 50 amps for the full 2 hours. Let's see what the starting surface temperature is, just so we know. And it is 118 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's right around 120 degrees. Let's plug in the Lightning now. Ooh, that's hot. Let's plug in the Lightning now and check back in 2 hours. All right, well, it's 2 hours later now, and I've been monitoring the charge the whole session through the Wolfbox app, and it has indeed been delivering full power for 2 hours. The Lightning now has taken in over 22 kilowatt hour in the session, and the app also shows you the internal temperature of the Wolfbox. When I started, the internal temperature was reading 109 degrees. And when we finish now, it's 131 degrees. And the outside of the unit right now is nice and toasty warm at 157.5 degrees Fahrenheit. So it did pass the extreme heat test. 2 hours of maintaining 120 degrees surface temperature, and then 2 hours of charging where the surface temperature went up to almost 160 degrees, and the internal circuitry went up from 109 degrees to 131 degrees. That's a pass on the extreme heat test. And next up is the automatic restart test. With the automatic restart test, I plug in one of my electric vehicles and I start a charging session. I then kill power to the circuit to simulate a power outage, a temporary power outage, turn the circuit back on. I want to make sure that the charger re-engages the electric vehicle and begins charging again. For some reason, sometimes the chargers remain in a fault state and they don't start charging the electric vehicle again. And if you're sleeping in the middle of the night and you just get a temporary power outage of, could just be a second or two, and the charger shuts off, it remains in a fault state and won't continue to charge the vehicle. You get up in the morning, your EV's not charged. Okay, so the Wolfbox is charging my Lightning right now. There's the pulsing blue light that you can see there. That means it's actively charging. I'm going to kill power to the circuit now. Okay, light goes out. Lightning makes a clicking noise that tells me that it stopped charging. Let's wait a few seconds. I'll turn back power on and we'll make sure that it starts charging the Lightning again. Okay, power is restored. So now let's see here. We got the blue light. Should start pulsing. Not yet. And this is the turquoise color I'm noticing, which is, it says it's plugged into an EV. It knows it's plugged into an EV, but it's not charging yet. So sometimes it takes a minute or so. Let's wait here and see if it starts charging again. All right, so I'm back with an update. I let it sit here for like 20 minutes because sometimes the chargers have a delay before they start charging the electric vehicle again, just in case the power is like an intermittent outage where sometimes when you have a power outage over 5 or 10 minutes, it flickers on and off for a while. And the charger doesn't want to keep charging, then shut off. So there's a time delay. Some of the chargers immediately start charging the EV again, but some have a time delay. So I waited like 20 minutes just to be sure it wasn't the time delay. And I was about to swap the Lightning with another EV just to make sure it wasn't a problem specifically with the Lightning. And I opened up the app. And I don't know if you could see this here. Plug-in charge is no longer activated. Now that was turned on. I had that turned on for the last couple of days while I'm doing the testing. and now it's turned off. So I wonder if the power outage, shutting the charger off, somehow reset the app. Because when I first downloaded the app, Plug and Charge was not activated. When you download the app and you pair it with your charger, you have to turn on Plug and Charge. And Plug and Charge is the feature that most electric vehicle owners are going to want if this is like inside your garage. If it's not out in a public place, you just want to grab the connector and plug it in and let it start charging, or let it apply to your schedule that you have for scheduled charging. You'd only turn this off if your charger was in a public place and you didn't want anybody to just be able to use it. You want them to need an RFID card or have an app to turn it on. So what I want to do now is turn it back on. And it always asks you here, you know, are you sure you want to enable that feature? I'm going to confirm. So you can see Plug and Charge is turned back on. And now it's starting to charge because it's still plugged in. Now I'm going to repeat this test, and we'll take a look at the app and see if it resets the Plug and Charge again. Okay, so it's turned off. Let's wait a few seconds to make sure it's completely off. Now I'll turn back power on, and we'll see if it starts to charge again. And if it doesn't, we'll take a look at the app and see if Plug and Charge turned off. Okay, power's restored. Okay, we've got the solid turquoise color that says plugged into an EV. And now let's take a look at the app. Wow. Plug and Charge is turned off. So it appears as though when the unit loses power and can't communicate to the app, or the unit itself restarts itself, it turns Plug and Charge off. So that means this will not pass the automatic restart test. And if you have the unit and you're using it overnight and you get a temporary power outage, you're not going to continue charging. You'll have to wake up and turn Plug and Charge back on for the vehicle to start charging. Now I'll confirm this with the company, but this appears as that's how it functions. I've done it twice in a row now, and both times that I shut power off to it, it turns off Plug and Charge. And now, in order for me to start charging, I'd have to swipe this green arrow here. See this? Watch. Now it's going to start charging. Yep. You also get a notification here in the phone. So yeah, that's not a good feature. That's actually a pretty major flaw, and it's going to fail the automatic restart test. So now I have an update to this review. I've been in communication with Wolfbox during the review, as I always am when I review products. I always have a bunch of questions during the review. And Wolfbox representative told me that I'm actually on an older firmware version. So they said, we want to update the firmware of your charger because you're on an older version. They actually sent me this a couple of months ago, but I wasn't able to do the review as soon as I got it. I never do. They always sit here in my garage a couple months before I do the reviews. So in any event, they said I'm on an old software version. So I had to send them what is called a virtual ID number, not a serial number of the unit. You find that in your app. Then they sent an OTA update. They updated the unit, and then I had to remove the unit from my app and then pair it again. And now they say that the automatic restart will work because that was what the latest firmware version corrected. The previous versions of the firmware, the vehicle wouldn't continue charging if there was a power interruption. The Plug and Charge feature shut off, as you saw earlier in this review. Okay, so now I've done all that. Updated the unit, paired it again with my app. It's charging my F-150 Lightning. Now let's kill the power and make sure it works. Power off. You could hear the truck clicking that it stopped charging. We'll wait a few seconds, I'll turn it on. And they did tell me that the way they have it set up, it should take between 10 and 15 seconds to start charging the vehicle again. So it won't be instantly like I've seen with some of the other chargers out there. Turn the power back on. Okay, key the light, let's see. There we go. Okay, so power's restored to the unit. What I want to see is, does it show that plug-in charge is active? Actually, yes, it is. So it's charging now. I don't know if you heard that blink, that noise from my app. It says charging started. And as you can see, plug-in charge is still activated. So they did correct that issue with this firmware update. It's just kind of a little wonky the way I had to send them a virtual ID. Most of the other chargers and the apps, you just do an automatic update and it updates everything. So why did they need my specific virtual ID? I'm not really sure. But in any event, so it will now pass the automatic restart test. Earlier I had said that it failed it and it wasn't going to lose points for that, but it does work now. So if you do have one of these units, make sure you're on the latest firmware, or if you come across this problem where when the power shuts off, plug-in charge disables, contact the company and make sure that they send you the latest software version, and then automatic restart will work. Wolfbox has its own proprietary app that you can pair with the unit. It also allows you to enter the type of electric vehicle you have, the size of your battery in kilowatt hours, and also the driving range. And it uses that to calculate estimated data on how much miles were added during the charging session. It also shows the current line voltage, the current, the kilowatt draw, the current kilowatt draw that's being delivered to the vehicle, the temperature of the internal circuit board, which is a good feature to have, how many kilowatt hour have been added during that specific charging session, and then it shows you how many miles are added. Again, that's a rough figure. You don't want to live and die by that because the app and the charger doesn't know your driving style, weather conditions, which severely dictate how far your vehicle can go. It doesn't know if it's 80 degrees out or negative 10 degrees out, which there could be a 40% swing in your driving range. So don't live and die by that. You really want to look a little bit more inside your vehicle for your current driving range. And I've noticed other people have commented online that it's not very accurate with the miles added. It's kind of a neat feature to have, but it just strictly bases it off the size of your battery that you put in the app and also your driving range. So I guess you could adjust that in the winter. Like in the summer, you could set it to 300 miles if your car can go 300 miles. And then in the winter, you could knock it down to 220 miles or whatever. And then that little number might be a little bit more accurate. So you could do that. That also allows you to set up 4 different groups with 3 different time slots per group for scheduled charging. I don't know why somebody would need to set up so many different charging schedules, but it does allow you to do that. Setting up the schedules is really easy. It allows you to set the days that you want the schedule to be affected and the starting and ending time, and then you swipe a button and you turn on scheduled charging. It's going to turn off plug-in charge, and then it'll live by that schedule. But it allows you to set a whole bunch of different schedules, and if you have a time of use plan, you can save a lot of money. It also shows you some good data on your past charging history, all the individual charging sessions you had, and then you can also toggle and take a look at your usage by energy or by cost. And if you want to take a look at the cost, when you do commission the app and you set up your vehicle, you also set up how much it costs you for electricity by kilowatt hour. And then you have that feature where it tells you how much charging has cost you, which is a neat feature because we all know how much it costs us to refuel at a gas station because you have to pay for it right there. But when you're charging at home, you really don't know exactly how much your EV is costing you because it's just mixed in with your full electricity bill. But with this feature, you actually can really look at it and say, okay, this month it cost me $50 to charge. And I like it when the apps give you that ability to enter a cost and see how much the charging costs. So you really have a good idea of how much you're saving, because in general, electric vehicle charging typically costs a lot less than refueling at a combustion gas station, provided that you're able to charge at home where electricity rates are generally cheaper. I explained earlier that the unit comes with 2 RFID cards and also a management card. The management card is if the unit for some reason isn't working and you need to reset it. And also it says if it loses connection to the app. If the unit for some reason loses connection to the app, won't connect to the app, this is supposed to reset it. You hold it against the unit for like 10 seconds, I think it says, and it resets the unit. I'm not going to do that now. There's no real need to go into the management card. But the user cards are interesting because this unit might be installed in a public place, let's say an apartment complex or something like that, and you want to give remote access to a certain number of people. You would turn plug-in charge off on the app. So if somebody comes in and grabs your connector, can't just charge their EV, and then they have one of these RFID cards. I have the unit plugged into my Rivian R1S right now, so let's see how this works. Put it up against here. This should start blinking. I just heard it click, and now it's blinking. So it authorized the charge, and the vehicle's charging now. To end the charging session, you have to do the same thing. You have to take the card, and we'll do it here. There you go, it shut the session off. You cannot use a different card. They're not interchangeable. If you start a charging session with one card, you have to end it with a charge with that card. That shouldn't be a problem because chances are no one person would have two cards. There's no need to do that. But that's how you use the remote access feature with the RFID cards. All right, so I've been using the Wolfbox now for about a week to charge all of my electric vehicles, and it's performed flawlessly. Really no issues. It passed all of our tests. Well, needed a second go around to pass the automatic restart test. And again, if you bought one of these a while ago and you don't have the latest firmware, make sure you update that. Otherwise, you're going to run into a problem with that. I found the unit just fine to work with one caveat. I do not like this cable. It's too thick. And it's not even cold out yet. It's kind of unmanageable in my opinion. They could do a lot better with this cable. It is really thick. It's 20.9 millimeters thick, almost 21 millimeters thick, which is one of the thickest cables we've ever tested. And some people might say, well, you know, Tom, it can deliver 50 amps, so it's got to have a thick cable. That's got really not much to do with it because we've tested other 50 amp chargers that have much thinner cables and no problems with it. Perfect example right next door here is the Tesla wall connector, which, you know, is one of the top selling electric vehicle chargers on the market, maybe the top selling one that are out there. And Tesla's always had a thin cable. The cable is about 14.4 or 14.5 millimeters thick, and there's never a problem with it. That delivers 48 amps. So the extra 2 amps really doesn't make a difference. Heck, over here I have an 80 amp charger, and this cable is slightly thinner than this one. It only measures right around 20 millimeter. It's unnecessarily thick. I know some people say, well, it means it's really durable. If we run over it, it's going to last long. Probably correct, but we don't have a problem with the thinner cables like the Tesla wall connector. I've been doing this a very long time. I've never heard of somebody having a problem where they had to replace their Tesla wall connector because they ran over or the cable cracked. So I think Wolfbox would be better off if they got a thinner, more pliable, bendable cable. That's one of the things that wasn't my best user experience using this, is dragging this big cable around the different sides of the garage to charge my EVs when one's on this side and one's on this side. The connector's not terrible. It's not the top rate connector, but it's fine. You know, it's pretty sturdy. As I mentioned earlier, I do like this cap. It has a nice cap that slides off nice and easily. It fits right on. Some of those rubber caps I just can't get off sometimes. The connector holster is okay. Just okay. I like that it goes up into it. I don't like using the connector holsters that go straight in. I do like that this one goes in and locks in. It locks in nice. It doesn't fall out like some of the other connector holsters we've tested. They could make an improvement here if this was on a little bit of a swivel. Some of the integrated connector holsters have a swivel on them, and it just makes it easier to holster it and pull it out, I find at least. So not a big deal, but we're here to nitpick all these little things and help you decide if this is the right charger for you. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the review. It's a pretty solid unit. It's not the first unit that Wolfbox put out. They have a couple other chargers, and they also have a lot of other electronic devices. This is a big company. I looked at some of the other devices they sell. They sell dozens of other products. So it's not the startup that just decided to make a charger because everybody is these days. This was an established company that sells a lot of electronics products, a lot for automotive too, dash cams and things like that. And they decided to get in the EV charging space. So it's an established company that has a lot of products. I like that as opposed to somebody that just comes out of nowhere because you don't know if they're going to be around in 6 months when you have a warranty claim. And speaking of the warranty claim, comes standard with a 3-year warranty, but you can extend that warranty. If you purchase it directly from the Wolfbox website or Amazon, there's a standard 3-year warranty. However, once you register the product on the website or through Wolfbox's Amazon account, you get an additional 6-month warranty, but you do have to register it. And if you're in the US and you purchase their expert installation service through Amazon, it extends it to 4 years. So if you purchase the installation through Amazon and then you register on the website, it extends it to 4.5 years. And while I'm only going to give them credit for a 3-year warranty on the ChargerRater, that's because the ChargerRater is based on what do you get if you have to perform no other tasks, if you don't register it. There was one other charger once that if you posted a picture of it in a review, they gave you an extra year. They didn't get credit for that. The standard warranty is 3 years, but you can easily get that to 3.5 years or 4.5 years if you use the Amazon installation services and then register the product online. So you could get 4.5-year warranty straight out. But again, it's only going to get credit for 3 years on the ChargerRater, which we're going to take a look at now. All right, for the cost and value category, it's going to get 1 point because the unit cost $499.99. It has a standard 3-year warranty, so it gets 3 points there. And as for value, I'm going to give it an average score, so it gets no points there. It doesn't get penalized at all. So it ends up with 19 points in the cost and value category. For power and construction, it gets no points because it can put out a maximum of 50 amps. It gets 2 points because for power adjustability, you can adjust it with the internal dip switch and also within the app. So it gets 2 points there. Cable length, 2 points. It has a 25-foot long cable. For connector, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. It's kind of like an average connector. Same with the connector holster. It's going to get a 3 out of 5. And as far as temperature sensor in the plug, it doesn't get any points here, but it doesn't get penalized because I'm not reviewing this as a plug-in unit. If I did review it as a 40-amp plug-in unit, it would lose 3 points because the plug that they give you with this to use with the unit does not have a temperature sensor in it. So it ends up with 25 points in the power and construction category. As far as tests, for the extreme cold weather test, I was deciding between a 2 and a 3, but I gave it the benefit of the doubt and gave it a 3. It did just fine with the connector drop test. However, the cable deep freeze test, it wasn't very good results. This cable is thick and it's difficult to manage when it gets very cold. For the extreme heat test, it gets no points because there was no issue. Automatic restart test, it's getting a point after all. It was going to lose a point, but after that firmware update, it now works, so it gets a point there. Safety certified, it is, so it gets no points there. And unit is Energy Star certified. And so for the testing category, it ends up with 20 points. And for the intelligence category, it is a smart charger with an app. I'm going to give this app a 3 out of 5. It's a decent app. It's got some good information, but it's definitely not what I would consider one of the best apps that I've seen as far as the EV charging equipment goes. But 3 out of 5 is not bad. It is not power share capable. You can't use this to share one circuit and have 2 chargers on it. It doesn't have that feature. It doesn't have the ability to intelligently load manage, so it gets no points there. It's not able to specifically charge from excess solar energy, no points there. As far as access control, it's going to get 3 points because you can do it within the app and you can do it with RFID cards that they provide included with the unit. So it gets 3 points there. And as far as OPP standardization, you cannot direct the unit to a third-party app, so it's going to lose 2 points there and finish up the intelligence category with 19 points. And that gives the Wolfbox WE a final score of 83 points, which when you translate it to a 5-star rating, it's 4.15 stars out of 5. A pretty good score for a pretty good unit. It definitely has room for improvement. I'd love to see them replace this cable with a better cable. I'd like to see them offer some more smart charging features, the ability to load share, dynamic power management, perhaps even excess solar charging capable. So it's got good bones, but if Wolfbox adds some additional features, this could be a very good unit. And a 4.15 score out of 5 is not a bad score at all. Okay, finally, let's take a look at my hits and misses for the Wolfbox WE50. All right, we'll start out with the hits. I like the fact that it is a high-powered 50 amp unit. I like the fact that it has access control both within the app and provided RFID cards. Now, for the average person that charges inside their own private garage, that's not necessary. But there's a lot of people now installing these in public places and rent out their properties on services like Airbnb. They can use an RFID card to allow the renter access to the charger and keep anybody else from using it. It's also pretty cool that you can get a 4.5-year warranty. Even though its base warranty is 3 years, you can get a 4.5-year warranty by using their preferred installation service and registering the unit on their website. 4.5 years as a standard warranty is pretty solid. And now for the misses. The cable is much thicker than it needs to be. It's not very pliable and bendable. There's much better cables out there on the market that can support a 50 amp unit, so that's definitely one of my misses. It also lacks intelligent charging features, things like the ability to power share and also intelligent load management and solar charging. It doesn't have any of those intelligent charging features that many of the new chargers come standard with. And lastly, the supplied cable to convert this to a plug-in unit with the NEMA 1450 outlet does not have a temperature sensor in the plug. With all of the problems we're seeing today with NEMA 1450 outlets overheating, some of them catch on fire, all of these units now that give you a NEMA 1450 plug option should have a temperature sensor in the head so that it shuts off charging when the high temperature threshold is reached, to prevent arcing, burning, and possible fires. All right, well, that's all we have here today for the full review of the Wolfbox WE50. I hope this review helped you decide if this is going to be the charger that ends up on the wall in your garage or not. If this is your first time here at State of Charge, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming electric vehicle news and reviews. And as always, thanks for watching.